Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jay Miller.
And my name is Hazel Miller.
And we are the co-publishers at Book Hug Press. It is our great pleasure to welcome everyone to the launch of Good Mom on Paper, edited by Stacey May Fowles and Jen Sookfong Lee, featuring essay contributions from 20 outstanding writers.
Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge that the land we are joining you from today has for thousands of years been the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and today is still home to many diverse Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We are grateful to have the opportunity to live, gather, work, and learn on this land. We also acknowledge that many of you in the virtual audience are joining from other locations, and we encourage anyone who wishes to do so to please share an acknowledgement of where you're joining us from via the chat function found at the bottom of your screen. And if you are unsure of the history of the land under your feet, we highly recommend the online resource native-land.ca to learn more about the land you inhabit, the history of those lands, and how to actively be a better part of a future going forward. Additionally, if you haven't already done so, please feel free to post a greeting for Stacey May, Jen, or any or all of the anthology's contributors, almost all of whom are joining us today.
Before we get underway, I just want to go over a little bit of housekeeping. Live closed captions are available. To access them, please click on the CC function that appears at the bottom of your screen and just follow the prompts. Secondly, today's launch is being recorded, and the recording will be made available for on-demand viewing on our YouTube channel in the coming days. And now, on to the show. We are delighted to be launching this important and poignant essay collection with you today. Good Mom on Paper is a collection of 20 essays that goes beyond the cliches to explore the fraught, beautiful, and complicated relationship between motherhood and creativity. These texts disclose the often invisible challenges of a literary life with little ones, the manuscript written with a baby sleeping in a carrier, missing a book launch for a bedtime, crafting a promotional tour around childcare. But they also celebrate the systems that nurture writers who are mothers, all the successes, the intricate, interconnected joys of these roles.
It's been an absolute joy to work on this collection with Stacey May and Jen and all the wonderful contributors over the last 2 years. The pitch for this anthology arrived in our inbox just a couple of weeks before the spring 2020 lockdown. I knew right away that this was a book that we just had to take on here at Book Hug Press. Not only because we are longtime fans and admirers of both Stacey May and Jen's, but also because on a personal level, the theme and notion of motherhood is a very fraught and complicated one for me, and it resonates with me quite deeply. Of course, it goes without saying that the sudden arrival of the pandemic threw all of our lives quite sideways. But once we found our footing again, working on this book became an instant balm for all of us. Stacey May and Jen are truly a dream team to work with, and we are blown away by the beautiful essays that they acquired and edited for this collection. And we are so excited for all of you to hear from the editors and almost all of the contributors today. Regarding the format for the launch, shortly we will turn things over to today's moderator, CBC's Amy Bell, who will then introduce Stacey May and Jen. The three of them are going to be in conversation with one another at various points throughout the next hour or so. And woven throughout those interview segments, you will be treated to short readings from almost all of the book's contributors, including appearances today from Heather O'Neill, Jael Richardson, Carrie Snyder, Alison Pick, Meghan Strimas, Sofia Mostaghimi, Rachel Giese, Lorri Neilsen Glenn, Erin Wunker, Jonina, Kirton, Jennifer Whiteford, Theresa Wong, Nikkya Hargrove, Riaz, Adele Purdum, Harriet, Alida, and Kelly Nian. And we'll wrap up by 5:15 p.m. Eastern Time.
Lastly, if you haven't already purchased a copy of Good Mom on paper, you may wish to order one or several, as they make great gifts, directly from our website, bookhugpress.ca. Or you can also order it or purchase it from your local independent bookseller. We'll drop links to the book's product page on our website into the chat function during the event. And if you didn't already know, a portion of each sale is being donated to the Mothers Matter Center, a national not-for-profit organization dedicated to empowering isolated at-risk mothers. And now, without further delay, let's begin. First, it is our pleasure to introduce our moderator today, Amy Bell. Amy Bell can be heard every weekday morning on CBC Vancouver's The Early Edition. She also produces the parenting column, Parental Guidance, where she takes on an honest look at the triumphs and terrors of raising children. When not on air, she tries her best to raise her daughter, Ellery, and her son, Beau. Please welcome Amy Bell. Over to you, Amy.
Thank you so much, Hazel and Jay, and thank you to everybody that's joining us today. I have been excited for this event for weeks, partly because it is very exciting to do something other than laundry and soccer practice on a Saturday afternoon, but mainly because I'm just so honored to be in the company of such outstanding talent and such outstanding women and mothers. We give up a lot when we become mothers, and reading these essays has been so inspiring to realize just how important it is that these women have not given up that creative spark, and that they have clung to it, and they've shared it with us all. And I was lucky enough to receive the book and read it, and as I mentioned to Jen last night, every story made me cry. It's incredibly emotional, and it just resonates no matter what stage of motherhood you are at. But what I'd like to do most of all is introduce the two editors behind this book who got this project together and are now ready to share it with everyone. So please welcome me in joining Stacey May Fowles and Jen Sookfong Lee.
Hi.
Oh.
We're so glad that I'm so glad I reached out to Amy and asked her to do this.
Thank you.
My dog is barking. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Amy.
You know, as a mother, it is very difficult to find time to do a lot of things, especially, you know, compile a group of 20 talented women and curate their stories and share it with the rest of the world. So how did this project sort of come to be? It sort of feels like you have tapped into all those whispered conversations that moms have with themselves and have, you know, during play dates and brought them into the light. So, you know, I would like to hear more about the process of how this book came to exist.
Jen, why don't you go ahead? You're very good at telling the story.
I'm very good at telling the story. We were, Stacey, May, and I were working on another anthology, Whatever Gets You Through, which is an essay anthology by survivors of sexual assault. And we, you know, when we were getting the book together and then when we were promoting the book, Stacey May especially was in the very early stages of motherhood. And I remember actually Stacey May phoning me and saying, I can't do this thing. Can you do it? And I'm like, that's fine. And then I would phone her 2 weeks later and be like, I can't do this thing. Can you do it instead? And there was a lot of that kind of workflow with us. And then when it came time to promote the book, we realized that the sort of system that supports book promotion especially does not support people who have children, especially moms. And we had a really hard time promoting that book. And while we were doing that, Stacey May said, hey, why don't we do something else? And why don't we do something about motherhood and creativity and the writing life and all of that? And it was something that we felt we could be like really joyful about, which was really important for us. We were both, you know, in the trenches of motherhood, of course. And when we floated the idea to our agent and then onward to publishers, the response was really great. And then it was pandemic times and things kind of went silent for a little bit, but it's okay. But am I telling the story right, Stacey May?
You're telling the story right. We sent out a call for submissions after we'd sort of solidified the idea and the proposal, and the response we received was overwhelming. We received about 300 pitches and full submissions of people who just really wanted to tell their story of how, not only the struggles, but also how children have such an incredible impact on our creativity. And I think the thing that I think is most beautiful about the book is that it's not one note. It doesn't tell just one story about, I think it was a book born out of frustration. It was a lot of me calling Jen, crying / complaining about how I couldn't do it. Beyond, like on walks in the middle of the night, Jen, I can't do this. But what came out of this experience is that, it's not just one story. There are lots of different stories, and there are beautiful essays in this collection that are about how children have enriched our process and our creativity. So I think on that note, it might be a good idea to bring in our first set of readers. What do you think, Jen?
Yeah, so we are going to have our first 4 readers, contributors. Again, there are 20 contributors to this anthology. We're very proud, all superstars. So the first 4 contributors who'll be reading for us today are Carrie Snyder, Meghan Strimas, Jael Richardson, who's joining us via video, pre-recorded video, and Sofia Mostaghimi. We're getting out of the way now.
Hi, I'm Carrie Snyder. And I'm going to be reading from my essay, The Dog Was Fine. Every Christmas, alongside practical items like warm socks, gloves, and pajamas, I give my children books. So many books that the piles of wrapped rectangular packages under the tree have become a family joke. I guess with books, I am offering them maps of the world, of human experience. I guess I want for them what books have given to me: the flow of a phrase or memorized line from someone else's imagination into my own, that in any moment of floundering might drop down a rope and haul me out of the mire. I hope that they will find themselves seen and rescued by books, as I have been seen and rescued by books. When I was a new mother, deep in diapers and soaked in breast milk, I felt bounteous. And it seemed that if only I could give my babies a series of homemade, gentle days and months and years, a treasured existence, if only they knew they were loved, they would grow up to be happy, whatever that meant to me at the time. I'm not sure. I knew on some level, it wasn't really entirely up to me to produce contented children, but on another level, I was damn well intent on trying. And I applaud those efforts, and I let them go. In this way, I've been able to walk with my children through experiences that could have swallowed us whole. I walked attuned to what was useful and available in me to offer them. The rest I jettisoned. This is not so very different from how, as an ambitious young writer, I believed that through effort, I could become the writer that I aspired to be. Write books like those that have rescued, that still rescue me. And I applaud those efforts, and I let them go. Thank you.
Hi all, I'm Meghan Strimas, and I will be reading to you from that time in Trailer 289. Chop was proud of Trailer 289 and insisted on showing me around. We stood shoulder to shoulder. I just saw someone say we can't see Meghan. Am I okay to keep going, or I don't know why it's not sharing. Sorry, everyone.
Hi, Megan, it's Hazel.
Hi, Hazel.
Sorry, are you having a hard time turning on your camera, or?
I have it. It was working. Let's go ahead and read. For some reason, it's not working
Sure.
now. I'm
We'll
so
try to figure
sorry,
it-
everyone.
It's okay.
Yeah, odd. So I'm reading from that time in trailer 289. Chop was proud of trailer number 289 and insisted on showing me around. We stood shoulder to shoulder on the scuffed white linoleum as he pointed to the mini fridge, the hot plate, the cupboards, the table, the love seat, the bed. He showed me how to run the blinds and work the thermostat. A big selling point was that it had AC. Not bad for the price, eh? An obvious joke since I was getting the place for free. My dad and Chopper were workmates at Whispering Pines Camp in Hepworth, at the southernmost edge of Ontario's Bruce Peninsula. The trailer sat in a clump of trees, a 5-minute walk from the Pines main gate, right next to a playground for the campers' kids. It had been sold sight unseen to a new set of seasonals who weren't moving in until the following spring, and I was told that as long as I kept Chop in his Tims, I could use the place for a few weeks to do some writing. Chopper, who'd earned his nickname from a wood-splitting accident that sent him flying and left him with a bad back, gave me one more word of advice before leaving. Don't be opening the door to any old-timers, especially one with a long white pony hair thing. It took me a few seconds to figure out what he meant by pony hair. He'll chew your ear off. Okay, thanks. Fox McKelvey, watch out for him. He'll take your whole day away. Got it, thanks. Hangs about the laundry, just wanting to chat, chat, chat. Mr. Chit Chats, that's what your dad calls him. We got a list yay long of complaints. Chop sat in the trailer's deck stairs and lit a smoke. Did I tell you my daughter's writing a book too? Chop's daughter is 11. I popped a piece of gum and sat. I could start work a little later. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jael Richardson, and I'm really excited to be here, at least virtually. I'm sorry I couldn't be there live, but I'm super grateful to be included in the collection. I want to thank Jen and Stacey for making this opportunity possible. I honestly can't remember if there was a call or if I was asked, but what I do remember is when the opportunity came, there was something I was dealing with right then. And for me, that's what writing is. I don't often write well on sort of commission, like write this project or can you write something about this? But oftentimes when I'm going through something, writing is how I find my way out. And at the time that this opportunity came to me, I was going through things as a parent. The pandemic was really difficult for me mentally, not in the ways that it might have been difficult for some other people. I want to acknowledge that. And that was also a bit of shame for me. I had all kinds of resources available to me, and yet still I was struggling so hard to parent, to feel like a good parent, to like parenting, to like my child sometimes. And so writing was my way of resolving what I was going through. It was my way of saying, like, what is happening? Why am I feeling this way? What's right about what I'm feeling? What's wrong? What's familiar? And so I just want to say thank you, because the great thing about writing my way through these things is that I can then look back and see and understand them better. And I also have these sort of emblems, these moments that I have recorded on paper for my son, for my family to be able to see and understand me a little bit better. So thank you, and congratulations to everyone involved.
Hi everyone, I'm Sofia Mostaghimi, and I'm going to be reading from my essay, Birth at the End. I used to say that I believed in small pleasures, leaning an arm outside a streetcar window on a hot summer day, stretching the tip of a drinking straw open, hearing that crack, slipping warm legs underneath those sheets at night, wedging that final piece of a puzzle into its neighboring grooves, listening sleepily to the tapping of fresh morning rain. I used to say that I believed in beauty, the struggle for justice, that even one life changed meant something. Now I'm not so sure any of it matters anymore. I cry a lot. In those tears, I count my blessings, and as I do, I feel guilty. You are one of the lucky one, a voice inside me says. People have so much less than you. But why should the fact that some have so much less put me at ease? The injustice makes everything worse. I am 7 months pregnant, and I wonder how I can be a mother or a writer if I haven't got any hope. 3 months into my pregnancy, my house caught fire. I haven't been home in a long time because I haven't got one to go to. My partner, Jay, and I have been displaced into temporary housing until our home becomes livable again. Pregnancy is typically a time of optimism, I know that. But there is a pandemic quietly raging outside. Lockdowns and stay-at-home orders are funneling our desperate, scattered energy into our lonely phones as we scroll through the news, watching how disproportionately this virus is killing the poor and people of color. Important protests are happening, championing the rights of Black lives, calling awareness to the inequalities on which our racist, capitalist society is founded, a call for change that in this increasingly polarized world seems to go unheard. It's the guilt that is relentless to bring a child into this world to feel such hopelessness when she is inside of me, brimming with new life. And so I've been thinking a lot about the apocalypse lately. Thank you.
Thank you for everybody that's shared so far. Jen and Stacey, I think, you know, motherhood is incredibly, nobody can prepare you for motherhood. So obviously everybody has their own journey, but if you don't mind sharing, what are some of the things that you have found most surprising in motherhood, perhaps that you weren't expecting?
I can go first, just briefly say that I actually found that controlling things and trying to keep control of things was actually just totally futile. The best way to deal with the transition into motherhood for me was this process of letting go. And Jen and I have a lot of, as you know, creativity motherhood conversations about messiness and embracing messiness, and how, you know, there's a really nice metaphor in my previous creative process where I would just polish up a paragraph for days on end. And now I'm just about getting it out the door. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, I think in some ways that sort of embracing the surrender and embracing messiness has actually improved my creativity and improved my mental health, to be honest. What about you, Jen?
There's been a few things, like, to expand on the whole messiness thing. For me, I actually ended up writing more than I did before. And I think that's because before I was obsessing about like everything to a really ridiculous level of perfection. But one of the most surprising things for me is that, like, being a mother and being, you know, put in the position of having to consider the world the way your child considers it, is a real sort of broadening of the brain in many ways. And I think that, you know, before my son was born, I was really just a novelist. Like, I only saw myself as a novelist. And then after, I started writing other things like poetry and kids' books and like nonfiction. And that's been a huge gift. And, you know, and the other thing is, like, total surprise, the kid actually really is jazzed that I'm a writer. And like, I'm like in a competition with his dad. His dad's a lawyer. He never says he wants to be a lawyer.
You're winning. Embrace that chaos and you'll win.
Oh, should we introduce our next group of readers? Our next lovely group of readers, Rachel Giese, Laura Nielsen Glenn, Erin Wunker, and Jonina Kirton.
Hi there, everyone. My name is Rachel Giese, and I'm reading from my essay, A Book is Not a Baby. And I just wanted to also say thank you to Stacey, May, and Jen, who are such wonderful writers themselves, for including me in this phenomenal group of writers. For me, feeling fraudulent as a mother ran parallel with my feelings of fraud as a writer. Faced with a room of other mothers or other writers, I imagine everyone wonders what I'm doing there. Among a certain group of people, this holds an element of reality. We have turned both parenting and creative work into a competitive sport as measures of worth, as extensions and projections of the self. And when one does both, there are so few positive models that the sense of not belonging, of not being authentic, is compounded. For so long, motherhood has been or been seen as an impediment to creative work, while the creativity mothers have brought to day-to-day work has been dismissed or overlooked. Motherhood has meant not being taken seriously as an artist. Outside of being shut out of formally recognized creative work, think too of all the common artistry of generations of mothers never rightfully acknowledged as such: cooking, sewing, beadwork, gardening, hair braiding, lullaby singing. Or conversely, being an artist has meant not being seen as capable of nurturing others. Consider the trope of the mother artist as thwarted, depressed, raging, and neglectful. The one who resents her children, who finds domesticity unbearable and stifling. Neither of these options, martyr or monster, is appealing. This dilemma is, I think, what Friedman meant in her distinction of men's production and women's reproduction. You can't be the subject if you're the metaphor. The biological metaphor of art as birth is a trap. There are other lives, of course, and other narratives. Toni Morrison, single mother of 2 boys, snuck in 4 a.m. writing sessions to produce The Bluest Eye, a debut novel published just short of her 40th birthday. Reflecting on her creative life as a parent, she wrote, "Motherhood was the most liberating thing that ever happened to me. Liberating because the demands that children make are not the demands of a normal other. The children's demands on me were things that nobody ever asked me to do: to be a good manager, to have a sense of humor, to deliver something that somebody can use. The person that was in me that I liked best was the one my children seemed to want." As Morrison reframed motherhood as joy and liberation, perhaps we might also reframe creativity without the dichotomy or the essentializing. We might recognize that child rearing and creativity can be, must be for some, collaborative efforts. We might understand that there are multiple paths to nurturing and parenting beyond the heterosexual and biological, just as creativity finds myriad forms of expression. We might expand our image of emerging artists to include those who emerge in middle age or later, at a time that is often most free and fruitful for those who have children. We might free ourselves of the impulse to sever our creative identities from our maternal ones, and as well to subdue our impulse to downplay our creative production by liking it to the more femininely acceptable act of reproduction. Having a child made my writing impossible at times. The demands on my time, energy, and focus emptied me. But motherhood also made writing more possible too. It's not lost on me that my book, An Exploration of Modern Boyhood and Codes of Masculinity, wouldn't have existed if I hadn't had my son, and if I hadn't followed the particular path that this particular child and our particular family led me down. But beyond that, I can't for a moment imagine that any of my work is forged in isolation. Like my child, my work is the product of many. It is mine, but not mine alone. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. Lorri Nielsen Glenn here from Mi'kma'ki, Ganana Scomaton. I'm reading from my essay called Handicap. AJ at my breast, days old. His wrinkled skin, large, watchful eyes, old eyes, a 5-pound sage whose emaciated appearance took people's breath away. When AJ was a few months old, the pediatrician told me to prepare for the fact that he may need to be institutionalized. I stared at my wide-eyed baby, who was staring at the doctor's stethoscope. The man didn't know that within a few years, we'd be in awe of AJ's remarkable memory, the internal GPS that amazed us as drivers, his ability to read the climate of a room. Institutionalized? Not on my watch, I thought. A decade flies by. Children on bicycles, on the tire swing in the basement, neighbors in the kitchen. Jeffrey has kicked the dog and she isn't moving. The pump has broken. Alan collapses from a stroke in front of the stove, mumbling incoherently. The next semester and the next, screams in the emergency room as the doctor resets one child's bone. Another child stands at the top of the stairs in the public washroom hallway, his pants down, shit all over his legs, howling. A school meeting and another, and tests and meetings with a specialist, the next class, the next semester, a snowplow, 2, 3, a tow truck driver, plates and plates of spaghetti, rabies shots, 2 kittens, then 5 kittens, faculty meetings, a newly licensed boy, an overturned car, school meetings, specialist, theft, a house fire, a renovation, helpful neighbors, unhelpful neighbors, 2 parents' heart attacks, a parent's death, a parent in detox, 3 sad homecomings, a tongue lashing from a bitter mother-in-law, the last days of a dog's life, a late night call from the police, dinners, school meetings, house guests, bottles of wine and house guests, gifts of time, life, promise, loss of time, life, promise. Try to write it. Try to write. It's enough to breathe. Queremos cometer miigwech.
Wow, Lorri, everyone. I'm Erin Wunker. Delighted to be here with everyone and included in this book. Thank you so much to Stacey May and to Jen and to Hazel and Jay. I'm reading from my essay on strangeness, swimming, my mother, and me. Though I am prone to it, I dislike hyperbole, especially now that labeling someone's behavior as crazy has, rightfully, been disavowed in favor of something more nuanced, less repressive. Say bananas, we tell our daughter. Say wild. Still, when Marguerite Duras writes, our mothers always remain the strangest, craziest people we've ever met, she has a point. When I think of my own mother, it's a bit true. When I think of myself as a mother, it is a bit true. Possibly very true about my mother. She is the strangest person I've ever met. But what does that mean? And what is strange and crazy at a point in history where our relationships to time, space, and place are described with words like bubble, quarantine, distance, at a time when isolation is a virtue? Regardless, this looping relationship between strangeness, my mother, my writing, and now my own child flow together in my mind. Glacial, aquatic, wild, dangerous. I circle these states, mother, maker, monster, me, stalking the edge of consciousness, teeth bared against the dark. What does creativity look like when your time is not your own? I ask this of a writer friend while the two of us are walking to get our children. What does making look like if what you make is dinner and neat piles of folded laundry? What does creativity look like but the development of a complex choreography of time management? Does that count? Will the Canada Council accept documentation of time playing hide and seek or managing emotions as evidence of artistic promise? We make fun of ourselves, my friend and I, and then we fall into a silence that, even though familiar, is unnerving. There were 2 other worlds that saved my life, swimming and art, wrote one of the many gendered mothers of my heart. But I haven't written much since our daughter was born. She's 5 now, 5 fingers on a small hand, 5 knocks on the door of my heart. Who am I now? And what am I becoming? Thanks.
Hello, my name is Jonina Kirton, and I'm reading from my essay, The Turning of the Wheel. A year and a half later, Jamie calls. He is alone and afraid. His fiance has left him. He is hungry, but too weak to prepare any food. I say, I'm coming to get you, my boy. He says, okay, but it's just for one night. He will not pack a bag. It's just for one night. He lies on our couch, thinly folded in half. He is barely there. It hurts to look at him. He is weak, too weak to dress himself, but he will not let me help. He sits partially upright, one arm in his sweatshirt and one arm out. Stubborn, he sits half in, half out for an hour as he straddles the change of worlds. 1 month of this, and finally he lets us move a hospital bed into our living room. Carrie scrubbed the dirt off his body, and there he is again, under all that old skin. He is still there, shiny as ever. The in-home care is cut back. He is dying too slowly for the level of care he is receiving, and now it is up to us. 2 old farts and a dying boy in their living room. I try to explain how fibromyalgia makes it hard, ask for more help, and my husband, sitting next to me, says, "Oh no, we're fine." I shrink back into myself. No one in my family has ever listened when I speak of fibromyalgia. I fade into the background of their lives. I think of my mother and all the ways I abandoned her. I think of my mother planning her exit, the way she wrote her obituary and gave directions for us all to follow. She knew what was coming. Even when dying, she thought of others. A few months before her death, she called me home to ask if I was drinking too much. She wanted to know if I was happy. Thank you.
Just such incredible words. It just resonates so deeply. So thank you, everyone, for sharing. Jen and Stacey May, obviously bringing you back. Just wanted to sort of ask you, Erin sort of spoke about her perception of her mother and her perception of herself as a mom. What are you hoping your children will one day think of when they think of you? What are you hoping to have?
Oh no, what? That is like, that's a question you take to therapy. Come on.
My best wish is that I don't appear in his therapy sessions when he's 35, but like, that's probably not realistic. I mean, I hope he remembers that, I don't know, that I'm like, I make good pie. I feel like one of the things actually I do hope that he remembers is that, to be quite serious about it, is that creativity and writing is always a really important part of people's lives, whether they do it for a career or not, whatever it is that fuels you and, you know, kind of like fills you up when you're feeling a bit deflated. And I hope he remembers that, and I hope he holds on to the creativity he's showing now. I mean, I think a lot of times when we grow up, we kind of stop doing the things that are creative. We stop doodling, or we stop, you know, braiding our doll's hair, or whatever it is that we do. So I hope he remembers that. And I hope he forgets all the nasty stuff, like that time I flushed his chocolate chip cookie down the toilet because I was mad. I did do that. It's fine. I've come to terms with it.
I mean, I think for me, it's, you know, all of these words are flashing in my head, like that I was free and I was happy and that I pursued the things that I loved. I mean, that's always the, you know, it's not worth it for us to surrender the things we care about. That doesn't improve our children's lives, right? They need to see us pursuing the things we care about. And I also think about creating, you know, an environment for children where feeling all your feelings is okay. And, you know, I think a lot of us have grown up in ways where we're breaking that, you know, we're trying to feel our feelings and be okay and not shoving them down. And then, you know, so, I mean, those are the things that come to mind. And I think creativity is very much fueled by feeling your feelings, and, you know, that those two things are very connected. So I think that, you know, when she looks back on her time with me, if she felt her feelings, I felt my feelings, and everybody was happy, then that's great. I feel like I did something good. Who's up next, Jen?
We're going to welcome some more writers. Next up, we have Jennifer Whiteford, Theresa Wong, and Nikkya Hargrove. Also, may I say, all of these readings are making me very emotional.
I've already cried. I've actually already privately, you know,
feeling our feelings.
Feeling our feelings. Okay.
Okay, Jennifer Whiteford's coming.
I'm also feeling my feelings. Okay. Hi, thank you, Stacey and Jen, so much for this. I'm going to read a little bit from my essay, Dog Rescue, Romance Novels, and Other Survival Tools. I was on my 3rd month of treatment at the fertility clinic when I bought my first ever romance novel. I'd never read a contemporary romance before, but this one looked good on the shelf of a bookstore, so I bought it. It was about dogs, or a human woman who moves to the country to take over her late aunt's dog rescue. Before I had children, my husband and I had 3 dogs, and I loved the dogs, but I couldn't see them being enough for me indefinitely. Being married and somewhat settled made me realize how much I wanted kids. I brought the dog rescue romance novel with me to the fertility clinic when it was time for my next appointment. It was perfect. The narrative sucked me in right away, and it transported me out of that beige room of sadness. Who wouldn't rather be walking dogs in England while falling for a handsome country veterinarian? I made a point of bringing the book with me when I went to subsequent appointments. I was expecting it to just be a distraction, but it ended up being something entirely different. The main character of the book gets pregnant, accidentally. I know. I'd wanted to heave the book in the trash as soon as I read that, and I would have too, if the secondary plot of the novel hadn't been about the main character's closest friend who was struggling with infertility. All those feelings I had when I read about the character's easy pregnancy happening out of nowhere were mirrored in the response of her friend. Suddenly, I was reading a book about infertility while I sat in the waiting room, waiting for someone to fix my own infertility. Instead of being distracted by the book, I felt understood by it. It flipped a switch for me, and I began to see the deep value in romance novels. I knew they were often dismissed as women's stories, but since when, I wondered, blinking back tears as I read moving passages in that bleak waiting room. Was that a bad thing? When I finished the dog rescue book, I read the author's other novels. When I finished those, I looked up similar authors and read their books too. Week after week, ultrasound after ultrasound, fictional happy ending after fictional happy ending. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Theresa Wong, and I'm going to be sharing with you an excerpt from my essay called Tantrum Series. When I look at the portraits now, I see that there may be more to them than I'd originally thought. David Hockney's 2016 exhibition, 82 Portraits and One Still Life, was born in a time of crisis for the artist, a time when he found himself unable to paint or draw for several months. He fought his way out of the darkness by returning to portraiture, embarking on a grand project to paint his wide circle of friends and acquaintances. I'm no Hockney, but I now realize that I too was going through a crisis of sorts when I started the Tantrum series. My manuscript had gone out to a large number of publishers in the months previous, and they had all rejected it, saying the story was good, but they just couldn't see it breaking out in the market because of its topic, postpartum depression. One editor wrote that he didn't think mothers who had been through PPD would ever want to relive it by reading about it. Not everyone, it turns out, feels the need to lend validity to a life that is invisible. The week before I painted the first tantrum portrait, my agent dropped me, telling me over email there wasn't anything else she could do for my book. In that moment, it felt like all my hard work had been for nothing, and my hopes for publication were crushed. These days, I look at the 20 paintings I made of my little boy lying on the floor, crying with abandon, and think about the woman who was standing over him each time, feet just out of the frame. I remember her, how hopeless she felt about her creative life, and how much she wanted to lie down next to her son and howl too at the injustice of it all. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Nikkya Hargrove, and I'll be reading from my essay called Making Space. Like my kids, The blank page accepts me as I am. All I have to do is keep showing up, to make time to get the words down, some of which I'll keep and some of which I'll lose. Takes effort. What I am grateful for is that I have the ability to do what I love, mother my kids, and show up for my writing. While my twin daughters learn to swim at the Y, I can write from the small bench that sits steps away from the pool. I can write when my 14-year-old son, Jonathan, is in his 45-minute long piano lesson. I can be there for them, and I can be there for my writing. It is not always easy to do, but for me, it isn't a choice between one or the other. I must do both. Getting to the place where I had the courage to put the whole truth down on the page has taken me 20 years. When I was an undergraduate at upstate New York's Bard College, I clung to a secret that has turned into my memoir. My mother was never there and instead found a home far away from her responsibility to me. I spent my life hiding the fact that I was the daughter of a woman who chose selling drugs, a woman who chose jail, prison, and a life of crime over raising me. My mother was both physically and emotionally unavailable in the ways that I will never repeat with my own kids, not even to write. In 2005, while I was preparing to graduate from Bard, I was also preparing myself to go pick my mother up from a 3-year prison sentence. I told no one where I was headed that cold March day when I took a trip to New York City and my mother was released into my custody. I was only 24 years old. Now, as I write my memoir, a story about how, as a gay Black woman, I became a mother when I didn't have a very good example of one, I reflect on my relationship with her. Thank you.
Thank you. Just all incredibly moving stories. One common theme that seems to come up in a lot of these stories and these essays is that loneliness of motherhood. It can be quite isolating at times, and a lot of mothers do struggle through it. What are some ways that you have found to sort of help bring you out of those lonely times, or perhaps things you have done to help other mothers feel less alone?
I think, for a good portion of my son's life, I was a single mom, and that is some of the loneliest, especially at night after your child has gone to bed, is some of the loneliest times, I think. And for me, I'm very fortunate to have a lot of really good friends who helped me fill that time. But also, is it weird to say Netflix? No, it's not weird. It is what it is. But I'm actually really grateful for Stacey May in particular, because, we became very good friends at a really sort of, I think, pivotal times for both of us in our lives, in sort of our paths of motherhood. And I think that being able to, let's be honest, complain to Stacey May about my life was a really wonderful thing. And I think that, when we were conceiving of this book, we'd said that a lot of these things mothers were saying to each other in private, and we wanted to make those things public. And I think that we all have that experience of having, that mom group chat or whatever, or your friends in the neighborhood who you turn to for these things. And I hope the Good Mom on Paper gets to be a kind of like community for other moms if they're feeling really isolated, because we've all felt those feelings, as we keep saying.
Yeah.
It's really interesting when you asked the question, I was just going to yell out Jen. But it's really interesting to edit a book and edit individual pieces in a book. And then when the book is coming to the point of publication, reading the whole manuscript as a reader, and how the pieces come together. And I remember thinking that if I had this book in that sort of those depths of loneliness, that really difficult time where I had such a hard time figuring out who I was creatively and what my identity was while I was struggling through that swamp. This book would have helped me immeasurably. And it feels like it's the solace that I was seeking when I was complaining to Jen and being like, let's do a project. I don't know what else to do. So so maybe we should, hear more from these beautiful readers. Jen, do you want to introduce the next?
Yeah, I should say that, actually, I forgot what I was going to say. This is the other thing, it's mom brain. Sometimes
well, it's interesting because I was thinking about mom brain when you were talking about how your mind expanded and you wanted to do so many more creative things, right? Because it's the opposite of the mom brain cliche, right? It's the
no, I don't think it's the opposite. I think it's consistent because my mom brain is so fragmented. I can't focus on one thing at a time. I have to focus on 7 things at a time. Poorly, pay poor attention.
It's a feature.
You multitask poorly. That is the whole point. Anyone who's ever written me an email knows I would multitask poorly. So our next group of readers I would like to introduce, we have Anonymous, Heather O'Neill, Allison Pick, and a special tribute.
No, we don't. You're wrong. You got it. Wrong group.
Oh my gosh.
It's okay. You proved your point quite excellently.
Poorly. And let me rejig that. Amber Riaz, Adele Purdum, Harriet Alida Lai, joining us pre-recorded video, and Kelly Ngan.
Assalamu alaikum. Hello, everybody. I'm Amber Riaz, and I'll be reading from my essay, I Am Mother, Wife, Muslim. The day I met Canada's Rockies, I wrote 1,000,000 silent verses. You were a writer, they said. I used to be, I said. But when I got married, my hennaed hands learned to hold wooden spoons and forgot the feel of a pen. My poetry melted into the curries I served, and my spirit sang to new tunes. It used to be, I said, that my heartstrings thrummed to words woven tapestried. But now, I said, I thrive on I love you from young lips. I still write, I said, but now I write only on my heart. I find poetry in little smiles, in belly tickles, in bedtime chats, in magic kisses, in game nights and movie nights. My poetry melts into curries and chapatis, feeding my soul their bodies. You are a mother, they said. I still write, I said. While I internalize the messages that tell me I'm not worthy, I also hope to challenge them, to find the energy and the strength to show my children that resilience and recovery are habits, not just a one-time act. My portfolio still sits on my desk, a reminder that my dream hasn't died, not yet. I flipped through it before sitting down to write this essay and discovered the poem I wrote almost 10 years ago, at a time when my children were both young, and was reminded that creativity expresses itself in many different ways. I may not have managed to publish that novel I have always wanted to write, but I did manage to create for them magical stories about Eid fairies who bring special gifts in secret, stories that are now treasured family lore. If I can do that, then I also know that motherhood has made it possible for me to become a stronger writer. I am confident that one of these days, I will finally crack open that portfolio and find a way to say all that I have been wanting to say. Shukriya. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Adele Purdum, and I'm reading from my essay, The Giving Tree. When you were in kindergarten, and I picked you up at the end of the day, pushing a stroller with your then baby sister in it, you would throw your bag to the ground at my feet and wail from tiredness or hunger, or just because you could, or most likely some unknown reason to me. And other parents would turn to me, visibly disturbed, because this was obviously the most upsetting for them. And they would ask me, what's wrong? What they really wanted to ask was, how can we make her stop? Other times, their generosity was too much. What can I do? Their eyes pleaded. Nothing. Stop looking at the spectacle of us. Please go away. But I didn't really mean that. Not that I wanted to be a spectacle. I didn't. But that I can do it alone, I can't. Sometimes I want to be like the French photographer, Anna Grabanides. Her photography appeared in the New Yorker, an evocative series of Black and white photos she took of herself and her daughter with Down syndrome, engaging in daily tasks together. Anna, the mother, looks directly at the camera in each shot. In one photo, she holds out her foot for her daughter, who's painting her toenails, while facing squarely into the lens in defiance, the tattoos and shaped head on her left side on full display. When you are crying, I want to freeze frame, shoot the camera with just my steely gaze staring back at onlookers. I want to dare them with cold eyes to even look at me or you. Sometimes I just want to hide. I don't feel like picking up children from school and disturbing the positive flow of my afternoon. Children are such unknowns. I'm trying, Elise. I'm trying. Do you see me trying? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Harriet, and this is Lucy. She's a different baby than the one I mentioned in the piece I'm about to read, which is called Binaries. 9 months pregnant, 8 days before my due date, I was feeling confident and level-headed, and like part of my life's purpose had just become clear. I was offered a deal for my second book, a book I've been wanting to write, obsessed with writing, for 15 years. The book was a memoir about a unique and highly fatal form of leukemia that I had had at the age of 15, exactly half of my life ago. If I survived, the effects of chemotherapy, I was told, would be sterilizing. When I became pregnant unexpectedly, the book's shape suddenly made sense to me. Yes. I knew that I could write it as a mother in a way I'd been unable to as only a daughter. But I came home from meetings with interested publishers in tears, crumpled into bed, and tried to put words to my feelings of guilt and fear. Am I allowed to have both? I asked my partner, Cal. He didn't understand. Both what? A book and a baby. He laughed. I felt certain that if I got a book, then I would lose the baby, and that the only way to have the baby was to deny my career. This didn't feel metaphorical. I was terrified. Part of the book proposal included writing about my pregnancy and birth and the baby's early life. If I lost the baby, if I somehow jinxed things by promising the universe something and not delivering, would I also lose the book? I'd lose much more than the book, I thought. I'd lose everything. Cal said in his practical way that I love so much, "Mother's work. This is your job. Of course you can have both." Of course, he was right. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kelly Mann, and I will be reading from my essay called What Have You Done Today? Mom, one of my children will ask, what have you done today? The short answer, especially on a weekday, is that I worked. On a typical day, that means I wrote a lot of emails and attended a lot of Zoom meetings. Interspersed with these work from home hours are the hours of working for our household. The laundry, the cleaning, the cooking of the sacred family meal. There are also the school runs, piano lessons, and homework to be marshaled, a bill to pay, or a sock that must be found before the 5-year-old can go on living. But who cares? This is not the stuff of Christmas letters or social media posts, but the material of my daily load, working and parenting, both the doing and the worrying about. And then there's writing, my quietly persistent artistic practice that, like a younger sibling, can struggle to keep up with the big kids. Writing will sit to the side and wait, resigned to being picked last from my never-ending to-do list. But it remains on the roster, always hopeful to get into the game. And so it was during a recent creative streak that I reported what I thought was a victory for myself and my novel in progress. I wrote 500 words today, I said. There was an implied ta-da as punctuation, but everyone failed to pick up on it. Is that a lot? The kindergartner asked. This is a kid who used to spend hours being charmed by mismatched Tupperware lids. Now that he's in school, he's got opinions and is far less easy to impress. His sister interjected, a third grader, she is turbocharged on reading and will burn through a novel in one sitting. She will gladly tell anyone who asks that she gets books and math. I could see her doing the addition in her head, fingers tapping on the table to double check the calculation. But aren't there like millions of words in a book, she said. The upspeak at the end, both the result of 2 missing front teeth and a desire to be at least a tiny bit diplomatic. It's more like tens of thousands, I said, but neither of them was particularly interested in the distinction. 500 out of any larger number equals not enough. Thank you very much.
I think a special shout out to Harriet for doing her beautiful reading with the adorable and squirmy baby on her lap, because every mom has been in that position at least once. I think some of the best books, which obviously this book is one of those, but they generate, they spark important conversations. So I'm just wondering, what conversations are you hoping this book will generate among the readers?
I mean, I think that the thing that, you know, when we've been doing media for this book, you know, it's always the question of what can we offer creative mothers as a resource to help them with not only their creative process, but their careers and promoting their books and promoting their work. And it's funny, every time we get asked this question, Jen and I just yell childcare, accessible, affordable childcare. That's like constant. But yeah, I mean, I think what was important to us is not to just look at the individual lives of mothers, but to talk about what possible solutions there are. You know, how can we fix these things and make it easier for us to be creative people in the world? Jen, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I would add to that is that mothers who have a creative career, or mothers who, you know, want to do anything, are often put in a position to advocate for themselves. And I find that really frustrating, because the system is not set up to make it easy to get help. There's the constant having to ask for help. There's constant having to like ask it nicely and write a pleasant email and to be
not be difficult.
Yeah,
and,
not be
because
difficult.
if I'm difficult, I won't get the work. That kind of thought that's always in the back of your head. You don't want to inconvenience anyone, right?
Yeah, and so what I would wish is that if affordable and accessible childcare and all the other supports that people need are available, that we don't have to put people in a position to have to advocate hard for it, because it can be really hard to ask. Yeah, like, I mean, having to ask for extra fee because you had to pay for a sitter is you don't ever feel like you should or you can. So what if it was just part of the deal?
Exactly.
Imagine that.
My goodness.
Should I introduce our next group of readers? First up, we have Anonymous, then Heather O'Neill, Allison Pick, and a tribute to Lee Markle.
Hi, thanks for having me. This is from my essay, Echolalia. Since having you, I've lost my capacity for narrative. All my stories fall out of their containers, unwieldy. I'm left with these long sentences, and then. I repeat myself. Maybe it's fatigue. You don't sleep well. Maybe it's hard to write my own stories when my head is always filled with Daniel's Tiger's neighborhood songs. You can't answer a question, but you can memorize an entire song or book after hearing it once. You have a Daniel Tiger's neighborhood song for every situation. Your language is a mixtape. You bring me a toy, singing a song about taking care of each other, and I sing it back. You put on your shirt, singing a song about the pride of solving a problem by yourself, and I sing it back. I said you can't answer a question, but maybe that's wrong. You can't answer a question that ends with a question mark, but there are lots of ways to ask questions. When I watch you gather stones at the beach, I collect information, the tilt of your head, how your breathing changes when you're about to get upset, the way you delight in the wet sand between your fist, but hate when your hands get dirty. Your hands answer questions. Your breath answers questions. The stones you choose answer questions. are not always the questions I ask. When I do write, I find myself writing to you and about you. I start writing to you and end up writing to myself. I slip into second person so easily. I've become one of those moms I got warned about before I had kids. One of those moms without her own stories, who writes about her kid, who talks about her kid on Twitter. But I want to sing you out loud. So few people get to know you, my love, and you are so fun to know. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Heather O'Neill, and this is from Light Bright Times Square. So the next week, I bought 2 Greyhound bus tickets to New York City. That was where people went to be artists and have their dreams come true. I knew this from Kermit the Frog's Muppet movies. He was one of the only few male figures in my life who was decent. Even his foibles and flaws were decent. My life would have been so much better if only I had met a man like Kermit the Frog. On the bus ride, I pulled out my manuscript. I had forgotten to print the numbers on the bottom corners of the pages. I handed it to Arizona and gave her a pencil to write the numbers. I got this, she said. When I looked over several minutes later, she was at 203. When I looked over several minutes after that, she was at 147. Well, who was going to say page numbers had to be that chronological? Weren't they in large part decorative? I hoped no one would notice. Reader, they would. As with everything I did, it also had to be an activity for Arizona. This was because she needed to have a wonderful childhood. She needed to be exposed to the world and culture so she would grow up lovely. When we got to New York, I was so excited for her to see Times Square. I had gone to New York City when I was 19 years old, and I had always thought Montreal was such a big, giant city filled with the most beautiful nightlights and signs. But I was in no way prepared for Times Square. I just stood there blinking at it. I felt like I was a fetus that had just been born and was squinting at the hospital room in its mother's face, totally bewildered that the world could be so much more enormous than they thought. I thought I could experience it all again through Arizona's eyes. So I tied a blindfold over her face when the bus became stuck in traffic driving into the city. She sat there next to me in the enforced darkness. When the bus reached its destination, I took her hand in one hand and the suitcase in the other. She stayed very close to my body as I navigated the bustling bodies that were all around us. Some people moved out of our way when they noticed this odd couple, but it was New York, so most people didn't pay us any mind. I yelled at Arizona that we were going up a flight of stairs. And then once we were outside, I didn't have to say anything. The air was filled with so much noise, honking, footsteps, construction, voices. Then we were in a spot on the sidewalk in the very middle of Times Square, and I pulled off her blindfold and yelled, "Behold." Thank you.
I'm so lucky that I get to go after Heather O'Neill. I'm Allison Pick, and I'm reading from my essay Down the Middle. I'm packing for Beijing. My daughter is 2 and sick, with bright red circles on her cheeks and a river of snot coming from her nose. I'm part of a support group for new mothers, and the facilitator is always encouraging us to share the hardest part. The hardest part is that I'm about to leave my daughter. The hardest part is that she doesn't know. When my daughter's born, I've already been writing for a decade and have 3 books to my name. But the year she turns 1, I publish a novel that gets nominated for a big prize. This means many things, but chief among them is that my daughter's formative years will be comprised of an endless series of impossible decisions that I must make, whether to say yes to writing or to mothering, whether to stay or to go. The hotel in Beijing is incredibly fancy. My bedroom has a huge freestanding bathtub in front of a wall of windows and a bed that a whole family could sleep in. I calculate the time difference in order to Skype back to Toronto. On the other side of the world, my daughter sits on her father's lap, wearing her fuzzy purple footy sleeper, her eyes wide and glassy with illness. She blinks into the screen, incredulous. "Mama?" she asks. "That Mama?" I start to say, yes, it's me, I'm here, but she holds up her tiny hands toward me. Mama, she says, pick me up. Silence. Her father jumps in to distract, to console. Still, from across so much time and space, I can tell my girl thinks I'm choosing not to gather her into my arms. She reaches for the laptop and slams it shut. What am I doing in Beijing? This moment soon comes to seem emblematic of the choices I'll be privileged to make for the next 2, 5, 10 years of our lives. It is a privilege. I have a beautiful, healthy child. I have published books and invitations to promote them. I'm the luckiest woman alive. But the feeling in my body is like I'm being physically torn down the middle. Thank you so much.
Jay and I are here to say a few words in tribute to Lee Maracle. As I'm sure everyone knows, we lost Lee last fall. We're still, as are so many, reeling from that loss. But we're so incredibly honored that Lee's essay closes this collection. Jay and I had the opportunity to work with Lee on 2 previous books before this, My Conversations with Canadians, and also a beautiful poetry collection that she co-authored with her 2 daughters, Kalempa and Tanya, who we had hoped might be able to join us today, but they were unable to. And so instead, we've been asked to say a few words. And if I'm not already weepy enough from this incredible event, I'm really feeling myself overcome now.
Yeah, I remember passing the invitation along to Lee to consider contributing to the collection, and the answer I got back was very Lee. She's like, "What is this business about good mom? I'm not a good mom on paper or otherwise, and I wouldn't want anybody to think that." And if you actually look at her essay, that's the opening line of the essay. So it feels to me as though the invitation to participate to this book really set her off in a sense. And her piece really does round out the collection in such an anchoring way, I think.
And because we lost Lee, sadly, before the book was ready to go into production, all of us together did decide that the most appropriate thing to do would be to keep the essay untitled. But we do hope that all of you will read it and love it and say thank you to Lee wherever she is. And that's all from us. Thank you.
Lee's essay was incredibly well written, obviously, and it was such a powerful way to end this book. And as we come to the end of this event, Stacey, May, and Jen, I'll pepper you one last time with a incredibly insightful question. What would you say to a mother, a new mother, or somebody contemplating mother who really is struggling to hold on to their creativity while attempting to be a good mom?
I mean, I was incredibly hard on myself, which I wish I wasn't. I wish now, going back in time, I wish I had just let myself have the room and the time to come back to myself a little bit. You know, when you have children, you are in, I mean, it's such a fraught time to put pressure on yourself during, you know, a maternity leave to write a great novel is ridiculous. Like you don't have to do that. I think I would have given myself more room and more time to you know, slowly evolve into the writer I am now post having a child. I think that the change is like there's so many things changing that obviously your creative impulse will change as well. And to just be a little easy on yourself, that would be, if I had a time machine, I would be easier on myself, I think.
I think like that for me, like I think there's two things is that listen to your boundaries and stick to them. Don't worry, this stuff will get done eventually. But the other thing too is that what was really important for me to remember was that writing and being creative is the thing that I do to make myself feel better. I don't like bubble baths. I do like a little wine, but I don't love bubble baths. And I feel like when we're struggling with our creativity, what we have to remember is that creativity is the time that we make for ourselves to make the thing that we want to make. I know that we feel a lot of pressure and like responsibility because obviously we work for, you know, creativity also fuels our work. We might have a contract or a grant or something, but also remembering that that time that we spend writing or creating or building whatever it is that you're doing is the stuff that you do to make yourself feel great and to feel like an individual again. And for me, remembering the joy in the creativity made me always want to go back to it, as opposed to making me think that it was a burden. Although, you know, 50% of the time it does feel like a burden, not gonna lie.
50-50.
I feel like it's important to say that before we move on and wrap up that even though she knew I was doing this, my mother called me in the middle of this event while I was answering a question. So I feel like you know, mothers, right? Mothers, what are you gonna do?
Thank you both for being so game to answer all the questions. It was incredible to hear your words and just get to know you a little bit better through this forum.
Thank you for doing this, Amy.
Thank you, Amy.
In such a lovely blouse, I might say.
I've got fun.
Yeah, wow. This has been such a beautiful launch. And I'm very sad to be here with Hazel to help to close things out. It's been really wonderful to hear all the pieces from the authors and to listen to the conversation. But yeah, sadly, we have to wind things down now. We just have a few words of thanks to share before we do. But before we do, as Stacey May and Jen, is there any final words that you'd like to say this afternoon before we wrap up?
Well, I mean, obviously, I'd love to thank the contributors. This book has been such a gift to work on. It really is a pandemic baby because it started that week of lockdown, and here it is. And I always think it kept me company during some really difficult days, and I'm just grateful to everybody who was a part of it for giving us their stories and sharing them with readers.
Yeah, I would echo that. The authors are really the stars of the show here, and we want to be able to just say that, like, those essays, we'd get one in and we'd both read it, and one of us would text the other, and
yeah,
I'm
just
crying.
all caps,
I'm just
exclamation points, like, yeah. We're very articulate when we're enthusiastic about what we receive. Jen, it's amazing.
Literally, if you went through our text conversations, it'd be like 80% of that.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Well, we would like to thank you, Stacey May and Jen, for all of your incredible work on this anthology. We said it before, but we'll say it again. It's just been a dream for us to work with the two of you. And of course, we echo your words and thank as well all the contributors for trusting us with the publication of your absolute beautiful essays. And of course, thank you, Amy, so much for joining us today and for your engaging and thoughtful questions for the editors. It's just been so lovely to have the three of you pop in and out throughout the event and to hear everything that you've shared with us. We would also like to thank Book Hug's own Rachel Gary and Charlene Chow, who've been very busy in the background managing the tech for today. I'm sure anyone in attendance can see we've had a lot of moving pieces, a lot of moving parts, and they've just done an outstanding, wonderful job keeping us all on track today. So thank you both very, very much. And of course, we would be absolutely remiss if we didn't thank our audience out there in Zoom land for for joining us today. Thank you, one and all.
That's right. And, a final reminder that you can order your copy of Good Mom on Paper from our website, bookhugpress.ca, or from, everybody hold up the book, or from your local independent bookseller. The links to the book's landing page has been dropped into the chat throughout the event. And I'm really sad to say this, but I think that brings us to the end of our event today. Thank you again.
It's time for Zoom Wave.
We get to do the Zoom Wave
right.
next, but thank you again to everyone for attending. It wouldn't be as special without the audience, of course. So we wish you all the best, and I hope your weekend is fantastic, and please be well, and Zoom Wave.
All the best.
Yeah.
Thank you, one and all.
You're doing